Hey girls and gals, welcome back to my channel. My name is Taylor and today's vlog is going to be a science fiction new release reading vlog. My last vlog that I did like this was super successful. I read 3 new horror releases that all had springy covers and I ended up really enjoying all 3 of them, so I figured I would do the same thing for science fiction. So I picked out, one did come out last year but the other 2 have come out this year, but 3 new-ish science fiction releases, and we're gonna read them and see what I think. Now, you may be wondering, how did I choose these specific books for this science fiction reading vlog? And that would be simple. I went to my library and picked up books that had a science fiction sticker right here. So they are, from first glance, very different sci-fis. They've got like very different premises, different vibes to them, so I'm quite excited to pick them all up and see what I think of them. I'm very intrigued by all of them. I haven't read much more than a basic synopsis because I really do like going in only knowing like the barest blurb and then discovering the story for myself. So I've got 3 science fiction books here. I'm gonna quickly go over them and then we will get to the reading section of this reading vlog. So first we have the one that came out last year, but I keep meaning to read it and I just, you know, so many books, so little time. So I'm putting it in this reading vlog so I finally get the chance to read it, and that would be The Sleepless by Victor Manibo. And this is a thriller. It really gives me vibes of a Blake Crouch thriller in a way, where it is thriller but with science fiction concepts. So this is following, I believe it's our near future, where there is this disease where people cannot sleep anymore. So this is a post-pandemic world where a pandemic caused a large portion of people to stop sleeping seemingly without any repercussions, any side effects, but definitely some societal side effects. We're following a journalist who is investigating a suicide that may or may not be a suicide, and he starts realizing, he is one of the sleepless himself, and he starts realizing that maybe there are some side effects to being sleepless, and these could have potentially damaging effects for not just the case that he's investigating, but all of humanity. So that's The Sleepless. Very intrigued. I've heard this is also like a kind of crime noir meets science fiction, so I'm very interested. Next up we have Ascension by Nicholas Binge, and this one is about a team of researchers. A snow-capped mountain has randomly appeared in an ocean, the Pacific Ocean. No one knows how it got there. It just appeared one day. So a team of researchers and explorers go to investigate, climb this mountain, see what's going on. And as they start climbing, they start realizing that something may be following them, hunting them, and I think it kind of turns into a game of survival. This one also, I believe, is told in at least partially an epistolary format through letters and documents of the team as they're describing their experiences of maybe being hunted on this strange new mountain. And then last but not least, we have The Thick and the Lean by Chana Porter, and this one is a science fiction dystopian, and this is about a society where abstaining from food makes you closer to God. And dystopian, that's like really all I want to know about it. We follow I believe 3 different characters as they navigate this society and what it means to abstain from the simple pleasures of eating or the necessities of eating. Definitely intriguing. Can't wait to read more about what this one is about. So there you have it. These are the 3 books that I'm very excited to read for this science fiction reading vlog. We're gonna go ahead and get into the first book. I don't know which one I'm reading first yet. You don't know which one I'm reading first yet. So let's just go ahead and roll the B-roll and we will find out together what the first book in this vlog is going to be. So I will talk to you all later. So I have finished the first book of this vlog, and that would be Ascension by Nicholas Binge. And unfortunately, I didn't love this one. And I will say I am in the minority. When I was checking Storygraph, the vast majority of reviews for this seem to be positive. So I'm definitely, I guess, in the minority when it comes to my feelings on this book. But this book is about a group of elite scientists. They're all like the best in their field. There's a biologist, a physicist, just a bunch of different heavy hitters in the scientific field. A mysterious mountain has appeared in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, and they are all recruited by this mysterious society. They're not really sure if it's a government agency, if it's a personal agency, political agency. They're not sure who, but they all get hired to climb this mountain and make some scientific discoveries because, wow, a mountain appearing in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, that is crazy. So they start climbing this mountain and realize that something's not quite right, and maybe something or someone is chasing after them, hunting them down one by one. That's the basic premise for this, and a lot of the things I didn't like about this are in regards to like the twists or like at the very end of the story. So I don't want to give all those away, obviously, but the things that I can say about this one that really didn't work for me: I love epistolary novels. I love novels that are not told in like the traditional sense. This one is essentially a group of letters that this man finds of his brother, his estranged brother, who did go on this trip unbeknownst to his family. So we're reading these letters from our main character, who's writing these letters to his niece about what's happening on this mountain. And I just think like that was not like the best way to tell this story, because there's a lot of telling, and not like letting things organically happen. These also like don't read like letters until you get to like the next chapter and the next letter. They don't read like letters because there's a lot of dialogue, there's a lot of action happening. I just think this would have been better had it been written in a more traditional format. And I am a sucker for a book told through letters, through stories, through mixed media. So this didn't work for me. It didn't feel like letters the entire time, as well as just like the main character just was an enigma to me, not in a way that I feel like the author wanted him to be. There were just like a lot of things that just felt wrong. I just felt like ultimately I was held at like an arm's length from the story because of the restrictions of the epistolary format, and it was supposed to be more of like a thriller, and this could have been a very good scientific thriller in my opinion had it just been told in like, you know, even first person, third person, just like regular storytelling format, other than being constrained by letters. So yes, unfortunately not my favorite, but this is working for a lot of people. So if the synopsis sounds interesting, you might want to go ahead and check it out anyway, because a lot of people are loving this. I'm definitely in the minority, but that's all I got for this story. I am looking forward to moving on to the next book. So the next book I'm going to be picking up is Chana Porter's The Thick and the Lean, and this is about a dystopian society. I think it's very heavily food-based, so probably trigger warnings for disordered food eating. But yeah, that's all I want to know kind of going into it, that it's dystopian. The cover is very cool. I quite like it. So yeah, I'm gonna dive into this one. Hopefully this works out for me a little bit better than Ascension did, and I will let you know my thoughts when I'm finished with it. So I've got some good news. Second book of this vlog finished and I devoured it. Pun kind of intentional because of the subject matter of this book, but I started it yesterday morning and I read it on and off throughout the day, stayed up until like 2 a.m. wanting to finish this because I really enjoyed it. So yeah, this book went a whole lot better than the first book in this vlog, that's for sure. So The Thick and the Lean is a dystopian. I'm not quite sure if it's supposed to be our Earth in like the very far future or just like another planet kind of like ours. That much is unclear, but we are following two main characters. There are 3 points of view because there is a story within a story element to this that I thought worked really, really well. But we're following two main characters who live very different lives within this society where it is very much surrounded by food culture or the lack of it, and the ideas that consuming food or the lack of consuming food brings you closer to God. So our first main character, Beatrice, grows up in this society that very much reminds me of The Giver, like that kind of isolated society. She is living in this commune, this idealistic community, and that her people are trying to push upon the whole entire world and kind of encourage other people to live like them. So they are very much the believers of eating is something you do for substance only, and you do not eat for pleasure. You shouldn't eat for pleasure, that's forbidden. The less you eat, the thinner you are, the more godlike you are. So she grows up in this very oppressive society, and again her story very much mirrors Jonas, I believe his name is, in the Giver series. Like there's a lot of parallels between those societies. If you like that, her story very much follows her in this closed off society where she feels like it is normal. She's reacting to these things like they're normal. You as the reader know that these are not normal things, but just following her as she kind of starts to feel like this utopian society that is so wonderful, so beautiful. She's been taught to believe that her community is the best community in the world, that they do things the right way, may actually not be a utopia, but you know, a dystopia. Not that the rest of the world is that great either, but especially in this community where she's from, because she has these unnatural urges. She wants to become a cook. She dreams of food. She loves food. I'm actually going to read the first paragraph from this book because it sunk its teeth. That was not an intentional pun, but like, yeah, it really sunk its teeth into me from the very first paragraph. I was hooked. So Beatrice Bolano looked down at her almost empty plate. She was still hungry. Hungry in the way they warned about in church, whispered about in the girls' bathroom at school, scratched into the wall behind the buff and go. Beatrice was hungry for taste, texture, mouthfeel, crispy, crunchy, silky, chewy. Beatrice was hungry for juxtaposition, and she would never tell anyone as long as she lived. So that's Beatrice's story. She wants to escape from this community, but it's hard to escape her parents and everything that she's ever known to become something that she doesn't even think she can be anymore, because while this dystopian community she's a part of is not great, the rest of society is not like normal or how we would consider society. It's very messed up too, but her community is like an extreme example of that, but the ideals are prevalent throughout the whole entire society. So that's her story. We also follow Rico, who gets a scholarship to go to a prestigious university for technology and science. She actually comes from an indigenous people of this land who they're the only people in the world continent, not sure like the scope of this society, but they're the only group of people who still cook food, consume food, eat food in front of other people. Again, normally, because normal is subjective, but they eat meals and they eat real food, and yeah, they're the only people left in society still doing that, and that is part of their ostracization, other than being the indigenous peoples of this land, which also, you know, they have the struggles that indigenous people of our world have in terms of ostracization and discrimination and losing their rights, way of life, all of that. But she gets a scholarship. She thinks this is her ticket for her family, for herself, to rise above. However, when she realizes that the scholarship is not going to get her where she wants to go, and it's something that the university could take away and will take away from her at any time, she turns to maybe some different underground ways to satisfy both her desire to rise above from the situation she was born in and also get that education, make a living for herself that may or may not be like under the table. So we have those two main points of view. We also have the story within a story. Both women find a copy of this book talking about a society where food is treated very differently, where food is not some moral failing, where being fat or being thin or having body fat not being like the ideal person, or that is not judged as a moral failing. That is just judged as who you are. It's a banned book in the society, and both women are reading this book and taking inspiration from it and kind of getting like a little bit different takeaways from it and using it to further their careers onwards. So yeah, I absolutely loved it. This really worked for me. If I had like the smallest bit of critique, I would say this is divided into 3 parts. The first 2 parts I felt like were a lot stronger than the third, but that didn't take away my enjoyment of just the story as a whole. And know this going into this one, intense trigger warnings for just if you have like any complex relationship with food, if you've ever had an eating disorder, if you've ever suffered with disordered eating, if you have bad body image, know that like this is very heavily talked about. And like a lot of dystopians, you know, especially Beatrice, who is a child when she's first introduced, she's 16, 17, she believes in these things. So her inner monologue is not the kindest to herself and very damaging. And that's obviously not an endorsement of these like things, these ideas. It's obviously a commentary on food, and just like the whole premise of not eating makes you more godly, and the whole commentary on the thinner you are, like the better you are as a person, that's really featured heavily in here. And as someone who has struggled with an eating disorder before, who suffered from disordered eating, you know, this, for me, I was able to read it and understand I'm like far enough away from that in my life where I could sit down and read this, but if like it was closer to my struggles with that and I was reading this would probably be very hard, even in its like a very lush descriptions of food and talking about every single thing that the people eat. It's a very food centric, very body image centric. So please know that before going into this one. I would say read the first chapter if you're concerned about it, and if you can deal with the first chapter, then I think you'll be able to go along with the rest of the book. Just so very heavy trigger warnings for this one, but this really worked for me. I really enjoyed it, and I definitely will be checking out more by this author. I know this author has other works out, but yeah, I found a keeper. I really enjoyed it. So that brings us to our third and final book of this vlog that I'll be picking up, The Sleepless by Victor Manibo. Can't wait to start this one. I'm gonna go get to reading, and I will check back in with a review of this book a little bit later. So this video has been quite a long time in the making, quite a while more than I would have anticipated. I think I started the first book in this vlog like the beginning of May, and now it's June. I don't know if you can tell from maybe the ambient dog playing noises behind me, but when I started this vlog, I did not have this little guy, who already looks so much bigger than in the last vlog that you might have seen. That was the one where we got him. So yes, we adopted a puppy, rescued a puppy. So we were not intending to get a puppy, but we could not say no to this cute little face. So this is Obi, named after Obi-Wan Kenobi from Star Wars. And he and my other dog, Bruce, love each other, are having a great time. But if you've ever introduced a new dog into your home or a brand new puppy, because he's just about 8 weeks now, he was about 5 weeks, 6 weeks when we got him. Yeah, it's been a lot, but I did finally finish The Sleepless by Victor Manibo, and I really enjoyed this one. I really enjoyed, sorry if you can hear the dogs in the background, I'm doing what I can. But this one is a science fiction slash noir detective. It's not a detective, it's a journalist, but like slash noir detective story, which I thought was a really cool blend of genres and made this story very unique. So this takes place in the Earth's near future. It's like the 2040s. The Earth has gone through a pandemic that has created the sleepless. So if you get hit with this pandemic, you become sleepless. You never have to sleep again. So a large percentage of the world now no longer has any need to sleep. There's no adverse side effects to this, seemingly. It's just a large percentage of the world's population no longer needs to sleep. Our main character, Jamie, is a journalist for this very prestigious company in New York. He is also sleepless. The story really kicks off where he is researching this story that he feels like is going to be a career changer. It's going to be a big expose. However, he comes into the office one morning and realizes that his boss has died of an apparent suicide, but because of the things they were researching, the stories that they were going to publish, Jamie worries that maybe his boss did not commit suicide and maybe has been killed instead. So he goes on a mission to try to figure out what happened to his boss, if it was a suicide or if he was actually targeted for the stories that this company was producing and putting out against certain politicians. Now, as he's trying to figure out what happened to his boss, he discovers that he doesn't remember what happened the night that his boss died, and he was the last person to see his boss. He starts realizing that he has had so many other time lapses as well, not just this one, and so he has to figure out not only what happened to his boss, but also if there are some side effects to becoming sleepless, and if, you know, being sleepless and he's losing his memories, if it had to do with the way he became sleepless in the first place. So I really enjoyed this one. I thought it worked really well on like the sci-fi utopian dystopian sort of levels, with the way that the sleepless were separated in society a little bit from people who still needed to sleep, and then as well as just like the journalism, amateur detective sort of plotline as well. I thought they mixed really well together, as well as the critiques of capitalism, right? Because me reading the synopsis, I go, yeah, I would love to be sleepless because I have never been a good sleeper. I just feel like I could get so much more done than just sleeping. I just think that would be really cool to not have to sleep, have all this extra time to like pursue all these hobbies. Sounds great, but then you realize we live in a capitalistic society, and you know, that gets taken advantage of, because after all, now you have these people that don't have to sleep, don't have to rest, so you have more of a labor force to exploit for longer. So I thought this book had really good social commentary, and I'm sorry, as my puppy barks in the background, I'm sorry if this felt like rushed. I did really enjoy this. It took me such a long time to read just because I've been taking care of a new puppy. I'm very intrigued to read more by this author. Our main character, he's unreliable in a way that's very fascinating with these memory lapses, and the way that you're reading and going about reading and experiencing these events alongside our main character, you also don't realize that time lapses are happening until the main character does, which I thought was done really well. So I did really enjoy this. I'm sorry if this was like a rushed kind of synopsis and review. I'm just like a little bit frazzled, but I did really want to get this review out because I did really enjoy reading The Sleepless. I wanted to sit down and do a review like as soon as I finished it last night. Squirmy wormy over here. But like soon after I had read it, because just, you know, I feel like anyone who has had a new puppy, Obi Obi. I've been interrupted so many times by the dogs throughout this just one little clip, so I'm not sure where I left off, but I did enjoy my time reading these books for the most part. I do have to say I probably enjoyed The Thick and the Lean the most, followed very closely by The Sleepless. I would highly recommend both of these books, not so much Ascension, but I think that there's an audience for Ascension. Again, like I mentioned in my review of this, I just feel like I was in the minority, but this was my least favorite. If you read a lot of dystopian, I'd recommend checking out The Thick and the Lean. I really enjoyed this one. And then if you read a lot of noir and are looking for like a more sci-fi concept on a thriller, on a mystery novel, then I would recommend The Sleepless. So both of these were winners for me. Yeah, my camera died, so we're ending this very chaotic science fiction vlog. It's definitely a genre that I want to pick up more. I don't pick it up very often, but when I do, I usually have a great experience reading it. Thank you for watching this vlog. If you have a genre that you'd like to see me do next, let me know in the comments down below. Usually, again, my vlogs will be more cohesive, more structured, less chaotic, but new puppy life. So if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up, leave a comment down below, subscribe to my channel, stay safe, stay spooky, and I will see y'all in the next one. Bye!